it's not complex integrated AI technology that runs companies. It's people using Notepad, using Word, using Excel, using PowerPoint, using meetings, using phone calls, using Zoom. It That's what makes a company run, right? Every project in a company runs off pretty bog standard tech that most people use.
We are a SaaS company, as you know, and as we're also an avid user of SaaS products within our business. I remember actually a year ago, I think it was, Luke said something. I think it was our last ScreenCloud together. So we were all the company were together in Bangkok a year ago, before all of this COVID madness. I'm pretty sure Luke said most SaaS products are spreadsheets, and I just remember thinking, oh yeah, I guess they kind of are really. They are just spreadsheets. I don't think ScreenCloud is actually. But the subject of today's talk was really that people imagine apps, and you go online, you look at apps for business, and it's like top 20 apps to run your business. But actually, is it apps that run your business, or is it the documents that sit behind that actually run the business? So that's the discussion of our talk today. And also, if it is docs that run the business, why is that important? Oh, hi, Catty. Why is that important, and why does it matter? So, yeah, that's me keying up. Over to you, Mark.
So I think one of the things that when you ask any company like who their competitors are, they always mention companies like them, like literal competitors, as in we kind of do roughly the same thing, we just do it slightly differently, or however it might be. But it's always very like for like. But I think if you were to ask most customers, when they look for a SaaS solution, they're not replacing another SaaS solution. Usually, they may be. It's possible, and as SaaS matures, that will obviously become more likely. But normally, what you're replacing is a process, or even a series of documents. I think this insight about apps don't run companies, documents do, is if you go inside any company, right? And let's say like we recently had our event, right? Our customer event. And you look at the marketing team delivering that event. Now it's, like all pithy statements, it's not 100% true one way or the other. But if you were to look at how that team pulled that event together, I would say that of all of the people hours that were put into it, I would say probably most of them were spent inside documents. Now, I suppose you can be kind of a bit, again, trite and say, well, a document is an app, right? But I think we know what I mean. That event would have been planned in docs, in spreadsheets, in and then probably a series of meetings and other things like that. And again, it's all app enabled, but it wasn't like a how to do an event app. It was a whole series of tools and things like that. And again, there are specific tools that would be needed. Like Tony will have been editing videos. He would be in a specific video editing app to do that. But if you look at kind of almost any project, we're doing a series of workshops with our investors coming up right now. How are we delivering that? Well, it's in slides and docs, and meetings. It's not a how to collaborate with your investors on a series of subjects app, and some of them are more in spreadsheets and some of them more in slides, like the finance and the budgeting is in Excel and Google Sheets, and and if you think back to our consulting days, most of what we delivered as documents. And inside of big businesses, it's documents, meetings, and processes which really run those businesses, not SaaS applications as such. Although, as I said, that will probably kind of change in the future. And, I think it's one of those things where when people say, who's your competitor, and they just mention other companies that look like them, they never mention Excel or Google Slides, or in our what's one competitor of ScreenCloud is a USB stick with some JPEGs loaded on it, with autoplay running. I'm actually staying in a place right now, and I'm actually in a hotel right now. Down in the lobby, they have digital signage, and it's actually quite good. It's quite well designed. It's showing off different features such as the restaurant, the spa, the local area is quite a nice, like there's a kind of, like you can't see it here, but there's like a nice walk you can do by the water and stuff like that. It's quite chilled. And in the spa you can have a massage if you wanted, and advertise things like that, or there's a restaurant and advertising that kind of thing. And actually I was looking at it going, all right, okay, that's actually pretty effective what they're doing. And it was just 20 JPEGs on a loop, and I was kind of saying, like, would I change that? Like, does it need to be changed? It's actually, it's well formatted, well designed, and it does what it needs to do. Actually, if I was talking to that hotel manager right now, would I say, what you need is ScreenCloud? I actually would say, you know what? It's a one-off hotel. It's not a chain. There's no need to remotely manage it. It's it's fine. What they're doing is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I can't slam it. So that's our product versus a USB stick and someone who's put some JPEGs together.
Yeah, and probably, I mean, unless they needed to update dates and things like that regularly, or if it's the kind of hotel that has acts performing every week, obviously they need to update it. But
yeah, then that might become a little bit more tricky.
For most hotels, like, how often do you need? And it's not like, obviously if it's in the workplace, if you had 20 JPEGs on loop, everyone would zone out of it pretty quickly because they'd be used to seeing it. But obviously the people who see that, or the people it's designed for, are transient. So yeah, they'll see it for a few days and go, oh, that's interesting. And then, never think about it ever again.
Yeah. So if to pitch that person and say, right, you need to invest a lot more in this, it probably would be unnecessary. It probably wouldn't be right. It probably would only become prevalent, like you say, if they started to do more event-based stuff and it was changing and things like that. And I think, so that's one angle. Is like, quite often a very simple solution does a good enough job. I think the other thing about understanding that, it's like when you think about integrations and things like that, actually, the best integrations you could probably do are with where content already is created. So we've kind of done that reasonably well, but we can do a lot better with that. Which is, again, like if you think of the world through the lens of everything is an app, then you think, well, what should I integrate with? You think other apps, but actually, does just better integration with Excel, or better support of PowerPoint, or SharePoint, or like, it's not glamorous, right? Like it might not look that good because actually there's a limit to how nice you can make Excel look. But then if you went to the corporate customers or to any customers and said, well, where do you author content? Like, where are you most comfortable authoring it? Like, where do projects originate from? It would be the Microsoft suite. It would be the intranet. It would probably even be something as email. Like I kind of talked about this a lot with that product team. It very rarely gets picked up. I hope one day it will. Like, I've always felt that the best upload system I ever had was email. Right? So like everyone has access to email in their phone, on their thing. Everyone knows how to use email. And actually, if you wanted to upload a picture and some text to a screen, right, one of the easiest ways you could do it is the subject line is the text and the attachment is the picture, and then you process the email and put it up, right? Like, one of the joys of like our expense system is that I can just take an expense report, just press forward button and send to the email address. And sometimes it's the simplicity staring in your face.
We've always sort of talked about ScreenCloud as being it's not an authoring tool. It's an enabler. It's not the beginning of where data starts, or the beginning. This is not where content originates. Content originates from elsewhere in your business, and it could be. It's probably going to be. Ultimately, it's going to be from a spreadsheet. So even if you're using business information, it's coming from some kind of database, isn't it?
Which might be a very basic database, like a spreadsheet. Yeah.
And so ultimately, what we're trying to do is kind of say, right, well, we definitely don't want to be an authoring tool. Although, you could, in some instances, use it in that way. But ideally, what we're doing is saying, look, all this stuff exists. Don't produce it again. Don't kind of replicate it. Like, there's no point in doing the same thing twice. Why not just have a way of kind of pulling it through and making sense of it? And As you say, yeah, like actually a lot of what we're doing is taking something that exists elsewhere and repurposing it and reformatting it to make sense in the way that people are consuming it. So yeah, just in the way that you might repurpose a bit of social media, yeah, why not repurpose an email? Or you could add rules to it. So that the way you tag that email or the address you send that email to might format the text in a slightly different way. Might be part of a different type of notification. Might render the attachment in a different way. All that sort of stuff. But as long as
you can do loads of fancy things. I think probably like because that whole documents run businesses, apps don't, or kind of thing actually came from an interview I heard. I actually forget the guy's name now, but he used to be the CEO of YouTube, and he's worked at Microsoft and stuff like that. And now he runs a business which is kind of trying to improve document management and things like that. And it's like, I think sometimes when you look at kind of business and things like that, like we all default towards complexity because we think it's complicated. Like, maybe it's just a slight tangent, but, I did a bit of a secret shopper recently, and I kind of went on one of our own webinars, and then now I'm in the marketing, funnel post-webinar, right? Like, so I've been in and did the webinar, actually was quite impressed. I thought it was pretty good. Some of the content felt a bit outdated, but like it basically was actually quite a good webinar. I was like, oh, actually we do this really well. I just hadn't been on it for like 2 years, I don't think. But you know how sometimes we might sit in a leader meeting or like a marketing meeting, let's say, and we might go, how do we improve our funnel? How do we make this and that better? Right? Funnily enough, actually just being in the funnel, one of the emails that we send out links to a guide that's on Dropbox, except we got rid of Dropbox a year ago and moved everything to Google Drive. And actually the guide that's like, hey, check out this 10 steps to doing great digital signage. When you click it, it 404s. And I was like, no, and that's fine. And like, it's not incompetence. It's basically an email which was designed and obviously worked like a year or two ago, which just hasn't been updated. And actually the person the email comes from, she doesn't work here anymore. And it isn't the same name as the person that does the webinar. So you've got used to Leroy, and then it comes from Mima, who's just someone else, right? And and I'm not sort of saying this to say we're shit or anything like that. It's just because we loads of moving parts and moving things. It's inevitable that stuff like this. But you imagine going into a meeting and going, right, how do we improve our marketing funnel? What's people going to say? Mostly they're going to say, right, it's like, well, we need to segment better. We need to do more intelligence. We need better data. But actually one answer is just, have you checked that it actually works? Like that it doesn't link to stuff which is broken? Because you know what? I'll tell you, that'll probably improve things. and obviously that's one thing. And it's again, like, how do we do really smart digital signage and stuff? Like the answer might be, well, is it easy for people to upload stuff, like using the tools they already use today? Can they text a picture? Can they? Because anyone can send a text message, or can they send an email? Does it work on Excel? Does it work with PowerPoint? I mean, it might not look great and be glamorous, but sometimes the really big answers are staring you right in the face, and we always, I think, as people, sorry, it's a bit of a rant, this, isn't it? It's not meant to be, and it's not meant to be having a go. It's actually more, if anything, it's more to me. I love technology, right? So I'm always thinking of smart, clever new ways that we can do stuff. Actually, half the time, if I just did what we're supposed to do correctly without broken links, just looking and using the tools that they already do, not having to reinvent any wheel, not trying to outperform the features of my literal competitors, and just go, how can we make it work better with Excel? You know what? I reckon that would pave the way for half of the innovation and growth we need to do.
I'm slightly reminded of the evolution of apps. We've talked before about how consumer technology kind of predates or presages, if you like, corporate or commercial technology trends. But actually, if you think when we first had the iPhones and the apps that came out, they were all like crazy, doing like these kind of I was trying to frantically think of examples, couldn't think of anything, but they were kind of like these these apps that were sort of sat within their own kind of environment doing things that actually, probably didn't need to be done in that way, in that sort of proprietary way. And what's actually happened is most of the apps that you download now help you do stuff that you do elsewhere in your life, kind of thing. And in actual fact, they're most useful because they kind of use the things that you already use, and they kind of seamlessly integrate with other things in your life. And you don't have to, I don't know, you don't have to kind of go from one app to another to sort of get things to connect. They sort of seem to somehow do it, and they they're connected to your bank, or they're connected to your email, or they're connected to your photos or whatever. There's nothing that where it used to be like you used to have to go in, you could only have one app open at a time and all that sort of thing. So it just kind of feels like maybe we're kind of evolving that way. In like SaaS is blown up and it's got really it's becoming, and all the predictions are it's going to be continue to grow. But I wonder if it is that kind of moving away from like what's the cool new funky feature we can do to how do we just make it
a bit more intuitive and a bit smoother. Yeah, honestly, like Apple launched the iPhone without copy paste, right? First version of iPhone couldn't do copy paste. I tell you what, that's a really important feature. And I think it's that kind of, it's that sort of, it takes a little bit of like honesty and rigor to look at something that just isn't glamorous and just acknowledge that actually doing it brilliantly in itself is not easy. And just like, one of the other things that kind of cropped up a bit this week, which is sort of why it's also in my head, is, you've got these incredible big systems, things like kind of SAP or SAP and Oracle and really large enterprise kind of software systems. And then, customers will always say, oh, well, this is what we use. Like, how do we integrate with it? And obviously your instinct is like, oh my God, that's like a 2-year IT consulting project. Like, oh shit, like, that's probably not going to happen. Or, oh my God, that's going to cost a fortune. Or where do we even begin with that? And this is always what I always say, because I used to work in that world, and I used to have that panic attack when a customer would be like, we have this great big enterprise ERP system that you're going to need to integrate from. And I always used to kind of, start to sweat and go, yes, I'm sure we can work with this. And then, you know what? I'd always default to the same thing. I'd be like, can I export CSVs? Like, I mean, I'm sure there's a really gnarly integration, like SOAP service, from the 1990s that we could work on. But the data that you want to pull out of it, is there an export system? Because every big system has an export system. And they're like, yeah, it is. Oh, okay. Can you schedule it to export, and send the report by email? Yeah, you can. Yeah. All right, cool. Yeah, we can do integration then. And everyone's like, where's he going with this? It's like, yeah, because you can pull it out in a common format. If you can pull it out at a scheduled time, then basically, yes, you can integrate with this big gnarly system. Now, it's not a native integration, it's not a seamless one, but as technologists, like, we naturally go to the perfect one, like the one that does it, like, connects seamlessly. But actually, this is where I think something like Zapier is just genius, because Zapier is basically sticky tape for software, right? It's like, oh, there isn't a native integration, but if I get it into a Google Sheet and then I trigger off that and I do that and I do that, and actually, yeah, it does kind of need to go through a bit of workflow, but do you care? Like, really?
And if it becomes something that, everybody's using and everybody needs, then you could go away and build something natively to kind of make it more seamless. But
and ultimately that will be that's like the winning version, but I just find it so funny I don't mean this just in ScreenCloud. I reckon this is the reason I wanted to talk about this, is because I think this is like a universal, like, holding up the mirror to other SaaS founders and SaaS people, and to be honest, and VCs, right? I mean, like, you go into a VC meeting and you try and talk about some of the really boring, mundane stuff I'm talking about, they'll be like, yeah, there's not much of a technical moat here. Like, oh God, like just a CSV into an email. Like that doesn't sound particularly, where's the AI? Like, where's as a whole industry, we skew towards this. Oh, I don't think you need a PhD for that. No, you fucking don't. You don't, and neither should you. But you know what? Do that elegantly. You solve the problem for 99% of the customer base. And then do the really gnarly, clever integration. And yes, you solve the problem for the really sophisticated edge case. But isn't it better just to help the 99% first, at least? And you'd be surprised, right? And I'm so guilty of this.
It's almost like kind of keep your powder dry for the really gnarly stuff. So, for example, with ScreenCloud, when the way that we're showing data securely, that's pretty complicated the way that we're doing that, and that's good. And we've probably spent a year and a half really working on it, and I think that means that what we've got is something that no one currently is doing it quite like we're doing it, but. That's not to say, so it's sort of like, right, that's our kind of, that's where we're the real technical challenge. But you could sort of apply that to every single integration as well, and then you'd kind of get nothing done, almost. Like you'd be slightly crap at everything. Whereas if you can find ways of kind of integrating without actually sort of going off and thinking about it for 6 months and saying, if this becomes an absolute requirement. I mean, we've known actually right from the beginning. Like people, like I remember a school early on, sort of sending us a video about how they were uploading kids' pictures to, I think it was Google Drive,
a Dropbox, I think. Yeah.
And then it was just, but the beautiful thing about it was that it meant that the teachers themselves didn't need to have access to the ScreenCloud sort of CMS. They could. That connection was just set up, and then and then just left, and then it was just down to you. Well, you've got control of this folder. You just do what you like. You're used to uploading content to this folder. Just keep doing it in that way, and just be aware that anything you put in there will appear on a screen in the corridor, which makes so much more sense. But it also is a challenge for us in some ways as well, because one of the things we're looking at is. You want to know how much value people are getting out of your product, and one of the things that a few people have come into the business and said, right, I really want to know how many people logged into the system last week, and you're like, we can get that information, but that doesn't necessarily reflect an accurate picture of how much value people are getting out of it, because in many ways the ones that are the smarter users don't need to log into ScreenCloud because they've got it set up to kind of integrate with all the things that they're not using normally, and they're not having to make a special journey to ScreenCloud to update things.
But you wouldn't want to skew the app to promote more logins. That's where your objective is chasing a data point rather than that just makes the data and the ROI challenge greater. So by making your app so convenient and so seamless into the ways people do it, strangely, you cut off a degree of understanding because you're not in there. You can't drop in some analytics system into their Dropbox account, and spy on them. So it's exactly that. Really, it's just kind of I suppose that kind of the key takeaway is before you start scratching your head about what really intelligent, smart things should we do. Just make sure you've covered every basic thing first. You want to go, right, we really need to improve our sales. Okay, first thing you should do, go and read all your sales material. Just check, is it actually up to date? Is it actually got the latest case studies in it? Does it actually reflect the features you've actually shipped? Because I bet you, chances are, it doesn't if you haven't looked at it for a while. And you know what? If it was up to date, you'd probably convert more sales straight away. Now, it isn't going to be the way, that isn't true funnel refinement, but I suppose this podcast is going to be like a kind of a reminder to myself that when I go down these kind of intellectual rabbit holes about how we're going to grow and stimulate more and this and that, just remind myself, are we actually doing everything basically right first? Oh, we are. Okay, good. Now we can go down the rabbit hole.
I suppose that's part of the growing pains as well, isn't it? Again, when you're small, you kind of over everything. And
yeah, because you probably wrote everything.
And you probably did it last week, and everybody's kind of seeing it. And when we were an agency, like then there was no, you kind of just, we were 30, 40 people at our height, and everybody, you pretty much knew what everyone was up to and what they were doing. And
by osmosis, you're all in the same room.
There were no surprises. Yeah, whereas you get bigger, and you can't, like, it's a waste. It's a waste of resources to sort of I'm going to try and micromanage every single thing, because that's why you hire great people to. But yeah, I think also then that there is that sort of sometimes, it's that the challenge. I mean, we see it most regularly in engineering, but I'm sure it happens everywhere. Is like, what's the shiniest thing? What's the most exciting, shiniest thing I can work on? Rather than, is what we've got robust? Is it still relevant? Is it still contemporaneous with what's actually happening in the business? And that's less interesting, less sexy. And I suppose also in terms of developing features as well, as like, could I just sort of do this by kind of linking through to a Dropbox, or would it be much cooler if I did some kind of amazing integration and someone could praise me and how kind of smart I am? And I don't know. It is hard. I mean, I'm not a developer, but I imagine if I were a developer, like, you can see it. Like, you can see what things don't happen. Like, the things that are really, really important, like billing systems. Like, no one wants to work on the billing systems because it's nowhere near as exciting as, I don't know, the next big thing, the next kind of new feature that we're bringing out. But like, clearly, if that's not working optimally, you can forget any other feature. It doesn't really matter if people can't pay for it, or we're not collecting money properly. And
or opening up a simpler way to pay you. So for example, like we haven't added it yet, but like ACH, right? That's the US version of direct debit. So actually that's something we haven't added, but if we did, it's another way to pay, right? So if you give more ways, like more currencies, more options on payment, then more people can pay you, and you just facilitate that. I mean, one of the great bits of engineering work we did this year actually was, one of our popular apps is Google Slides, right? Because they know how to make slides, and slides kind of fit quite neatly onto a screen, and so people are quite comfortable making content there. And then if they update the slides, the screen updates. They like that. The problem is actually the Google API for doing that is kind of a bit unreliable. It's not as good as you would think. Mainly probably because, I guess, for whatever reason it's for inexplicable reasons, it's inconsistent. So it will give you a slide, and then it will give you a slide, and then randomly it will give you a black slide, like basically a slide, no slide, and then it will give you the next slide, and you're like, what's going on here? Like, it's just not very good. And obviously that really annoys customers, right? And so the team looked at it, and they spent 2 weeks just working out ways in which case they could identify a black slide coming up, and then re-request it, until they got it, and then recompile the document back again so that it would never show the black slide. And they were logging it, and they were showing the errors, like the number of errors. And after they had all these errors, and it wasn't every time. It was just inconsistent, but it was enough just to start annoying people and make them think, is this thing really reliable? Because every customer would probably see it now and again, and then it would work again. You're like, was it the Wi-Fi? Was it this? But it'd be just enough to make you think, They pulled those errors down to basically zero, right? By really intelligently working around it, but by redoing what we'd already done that was working pretty well, and just making it even better. And then, you know what? It was a reason for churn. People were churning because of that, and that reason, support 3 weeks later were like, no one's left because of that reason anymore. Who would have thought it? Just re-architecting the back end of your Google Slides app would reduce churn, just by eliminating something that happens for maybe less than 1% of all people, but kind of 1% of everyone occasionally gets it. So
this is probably a crap analogy, but with the election results in the US, all you have to do is sow the seed of doubt that it's a bit unreliable, and then suddenly everyone's kind of like feeling really, shit about it. And I think it's the same thing. It's like if you I don't know, use anything, if you get a new device and it sometimes doesn't work, you're just like, oh, is this the shape of things to come? Like, okay, it might only be glitching once or twice now, but does this mean in 6 months' time I'm going to have a headache? And
do I feel confident scaling this? Like those tiny things have enormous butterfly effects or potential butterfly effects for you. So yeah, that's kind of I guess that's the rant for today.
I guess we moved slightly from documents to actually just do the basics right.
But it's all linked. The insight is that, it's not complex integrated AI technology that runs companies. It's people using Notepad, using Word, using Excel, using PowerPoint, using meetings, using phone calls, using Zoom. That's what makes a company run, right? Every project in a company runs off pretty bog standard tech that most people use. Email, right? SMS, stuff which is just, like there it is. And so often we take it so for granted, we forget that actually is mega power. There's mega power in there. And the closer you can get to working in the way that everyone already does, without having to learn anything new, without having to log into anything new, without having to training or anything else, you unlock this kind of sleeping giant, which is, like basically all of the working people in the world. Like, it's a universal language. You could go to any country, to any office or to any place and whip out your phone or your laptop, and that person would have a rudimentary understanding of email. You'd expect it, right? You would, but if you pulled out an accounting system, then you'd be like, have you used this before? Do you know? Yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like, it immediately, your barrier goes from 99% down to 15% maybe. You know what I mean? But that's where we often end up, and we forget about this huge thing.
I guess the other thing is that when we're presented with these new, different SaaS products, we immediately resort to trying to we kind of understand them in the context of how we use things like Excel or Word. So it's why, there's universal ways in which you upload content to a CMS, like, because that's how you understand the idea of attaching a file or uploading a file. I was looking at Tableau this morning, so we're just potentially introducing Tableau to ScreenCloud, and looked at a graph, and immediately I'm thinking about that graph through the lens of looking at graphs in Google Google Sheets or Excel and stuff like that. So to an extent we're already pre-programmed through our what we've learned in our careers and everything. To kind of revert to type, sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, again, it goes back to that thing when we first started. Back in the day when we were an agency, and people would be trying to reinvent stuff that already had a perfectly good way of doing it. So, but I need it to be different. I need it to be cool. No, you don't. I remember when sorry, I'm going off a tangent here, but I remember when this is really early days, back in sort of 2000, and was it? Maybe, but there was an e-commerce company that I was working with, and they didn't want to call. I can't remember why, but they didn't want to call their shopping basket the shopping basket. They wanted it to be called the bitch bag, and you're like, yeah, I get it. Yeah, I get it. It's cool and it's funky and it's quirky and stuff, but why bother messing around with that? Everyone knows what shopping basket is. Do you really need to reinvent that? Anyway.
Yeah. Well, let's leave them hanging on the bitch bag, right? It was a bit rambly, wasn't it? We haven't done one for a while, so we're a bit out of it. But maybe there was some useful nuggets in there.
Cool. Well, until next time.
Next time in lockdown. See you.